L. Zamenhof, the Polish-born physician who invented Esperanto. Saluton was how members of the Esperanto Society of New York greeted each other as they arrived at their holiday party in Midtown Manhattan. They gathered to honor L. Zamenhof, the Polish-born physician who invented Esperanto, the language these club members study and speak. Sign up for the morning briefing newsletter. Dr. Zamenhof was born on Dec. 15, 1859, and the club gathers every December to celebrate Zamenhof Day. Zamenhof Atago. To Esperantists, something of a high holy day to club members. "Today is our biggest holiday," said the club's president, Miko Brandini, who with more than a dozen other members celebrated in the meeting room of a church decorated with a sampling of Dr. Zamenhof's books and some flowers displayed around a framed photograph of Dr. Zamenhof, who 130 years ago published the Uno Libro, first book, laying out his international language or lingua internatia, this being New York City. Perhaps it should be no surprise that there is a society that has been around since 1905 devoted to this obscure language. In fact, there is a younger guard of members that has reinvigorated the club in recent years. Many of them computer programmers like Mr. Brandini. "The fact that it was a constructed language appealed to me," said Max Howald, 23, a computer programmer from Manhattan, who was intrigued by the language partly because it is logical and systematic like computer code. "You learn the rules and then you can create stuff," said Mr. Howald, who learned the rudiments of the language online and joined the group to begin conversing. Esperanto speakers say the language is relatively quick to pick up. There are few grammatical exceptions and a lack of gender cases and conjugation, which makes it mind-blowingly practical and accessible as a universal second language, said Raul Garcia, 32, the club's vice president, as one T-shirt worn by Neil Blonstein, a former club president, put it. Esperanto is the fair international language. The group has 30 dues-paying members, $10 a year, and attracts roughly half that number to its monthly meetings, which are conducted in Esperanto. There are also ongoing discussion groups. At the party, members wished each other a happy Zamenhof Day. Felia and Zamenhof Antagon. They did not sing happy birthday, Felia and Naskatagan, but they did wish each other Merry Christmas, Felia and Kristnaskon, and a Happy New Year, Felia Novjaran. Snacks were laid out and the Esperanto music was cranked up. The musical playlist was compiled by Robin Hill, 28, a computer programmer who took suggestions from other Esperanto speakers on social media. These included a version of La Bamba in Esperanto, and Super Bizarro, a pop song whose title means supermarket. "It's a famous Esperanto song," said Barbara Brown, 24, of Princeton, N.J., who wore a homemade button with a handwritten message in Esperanto. "If you can read this button, I already like you." Like many members, Ms. Brown learned Esperanto online, while older members learned it from books and courses. Arthur Bonetti, 54, said that growing up in Brooklyn, he learned Esperanto partly by tuning his shortwave radio into Esperanto broadcasts from faraway places such as Havana, Moscow and Switzerland. Perhaps the most famous Esperanto speaker is the billionaire George Soros, whose father, Tivadar Soros, was an Esperanto speaker and author in their native Hungary. The older Mr. Soros joined the Esperanto Society of New York after he moved here in the 1950s. Although not a club member, George Soros has dropped into Esperanto functions in New York City and has helped fund Esperanto research and lectures organized by another club member, Humphrey Tonkin. The holiday party briefly paused its festivities to hold its annual elections, essentially a formality, since Mr. Brandini and the other incumbents had no challengers. "We're lucky we even have a full slate," he said. Still, votes were cast by a show of hands, and Mr. Brandini and the other officers were re-elected, including the treasurer, Sofia Soskina, who beamed and offered thanks. Dankin. Ms. Soskina said she began speaking Esperanto in her youth in Latvia, where she met her husband at an Esperanto club. When they immigrated to New York in 1974, they settled into the city by contacting fellow Esperanto speakers through the Passporta Servo, or passport service, something of a directory and couch surfing network for fellow Esperantists. Esperanto is my life. I've met all my friends through it, she said. Similarly, Renata Kaczmarska, 50, a Polish immigrant, said she learned Esperanto as a teen in Warsaw, and the first thing she did when she moved to New York in the 1990s was seek out the Esperanto Society to bond with speakers. Through her Esperanto connections, she applied for a job at the United Nations, where she still works. She represents the Esperanto dream, said James Woodstock, 48, an immigrant from Moscow, who can read more than 20 languages and who collects Esperanto currency. Ms. Kaczmarska said that Zamenhof Day was a bonus in her holiday season, and a chance to honor Esperanto and her countrymen who created it. It's something to be proud of, she said.